Thank you for tuning in this week. One of my viewers mentioned that he likes watching my videos because I tend to do a lot of different things. Well, this week is no exception. This week is a Christmas ornament turned from a sea urchin. So stay tuned and see how that turned out. I know it may seem early to be doing Christmas ornaments, but if any of my viewers would like to put an order in for Christmas, now would be the time. So the first thing we have to do when dealing with a sea urchin is we have to clean it up. It does have an opening in the top and the bottom, which I will end up using, but they're not round. And I just made a little device that I put in my lathe here. It's just a cone shape with some sandpaper that I've glued onto it. And that will allow me to even out the opening, both on top and bottom. Now these were not great sea urchins, as you'll see, because of this shape. The top was very saddle shaped. I've got to put a cap on it. And in order to put a cap, you can see from this dotted line, in order to be able to not have some of the bottom cap exposed, I have to take quite a bit of those high points down in order to even them out. So I ended up with a much larger hole than what I would have liked. Ideally, the sea urchin would have been rounder, more ball-shaped, with a smaller opening at the top. Now that we have the sea urchin dealt with, I want to move on to the cap, which is going to be on the top of the ornament. So I just have a block of wood in my chuck, and I'm working on the cap that's going to go on top. Now in hindsight, I probably did this upside down. I should have put the top out, the very top of the top, and then worked back towards the tailstock. I did end up doing it the other way around. Not that big of a deal, but in hindsight, I would have worked this the other way. Hopefully that's clear here in just a moment. The reason I did the piece on the bottom is that's a tenon, and that's a critical measurement because I'm actually going to drill that out, and my finial that goes on the bottom is going to go inside of that. So that was the reason why I chose to do it the way I did. But it does leave you with a little bit of a nub on the very top that I had to deal with. There wasn't a lot of detail in this, so that wasn't that big a deal. I used a combination of tools. I used a small spindle gouge and also my skew in order to shape this. I'm not great with my skew, although it is a skill that I'm practicing. Here I'm just checking the fit on the sea urchin itself. Now I ended up coloring this finial off camera, and there's really three ways to do that. You can use India ink, but my local Michaels were out of it at the time. The other thing you can use is a black Sharpie marker. That actually works quite well. One of the things I like about the black Sharpie is it gives you a nice gloss and it's easy to use. The third thing you can do is just black acrylic paint. I don't like that as well. You tend to get a lot more grain raising from it. Now I'm working on the bottom finial. Finial is just a name for the fancy decorative spindle-like feature that people will often use on Christmas ornaments like this or on the lid on top of a bowl. This is a more traditional mounting where I've got what's going to be the bottom of the finial up against my live center, and the thicker part is next to my drive. So again, I used a combination of spindle gouges, skew. I also used my bowl gouge in the beginning to remove some heavy material. But for me, the spindle gouge or the skew was the best tool to put fine details on the finial. Now here you'll notice I'm actually using my finger because this piece is getting very thin. and I wouldn't be able to push against it without breaking it. So I just use my finger on the back side to hold it. When the wood is thick, as it was up here in the top, it's no problem to put some sideways pressure on it. But when it's thin, you need to give it some support. And for this, it's already round, so the best way to provide that support is just with your finger. Starting to put some details on the very top. I won't go all the way down, I just want to get it started. It's best to work from the thinnest part up to the thickest so that you're not, again, not pushing on the thick part and run any risk of breaking the thin part. Again, using my finger as back support, almost like a steady rest. And you can start to see this finial take shape. So it's going to have a bit of a ring up near the top where it attaches to the sea urchin, a long, narrow shaft, and then a fine detail down on the bottom as well. As I mentioned earlier, here I am just applying the finish because I don't want this finial to be natural color. I want it to be black. So I'm just using a black Sharpie marker. Now there were a couple fine spots right there. You can see one of them on the finial, a fine detail, a small groove that the Sharpie marker wouldn't get in. For that, I did touch it up with a little bit of acrylic paint on a paintbrush. And then once that's done, as I had done for the top, I applied a spray lacquer. This piece at the very top, I actually cut this down to a diameter that is the same size as the hole I drilled in the top. And I'll show you why in a minute that I've done that. So here's the top and bottom finial. You can see the detail there. So that piece that I talked about where I cut the spindle down to diameter is actually fitting inside the top in a drilled hole. And it works like a coupling as that piece slides in the hole. This way you can put the top finial together with the bottom without putting any pressure on the sea urchin, which is rather fragile, plus there's no real surface to glue against. I do apologize, I've done a horrible job here centering my work in the frame. I really need to get a second monitor so I can see what I'm doing. But hopefully you can see a little bit how it's going together, as I'd already explained, and I will show pictures here at the end of the finished product. Again, I'll put some finished pictures up at the end, but I really like the contrast of the black against the pink and white sea urchin. So here's the final product. I did put a hook on the top, which was just from a fish hook with the hook cut off, and I just used the eyelet at the top, and that's what I'll use to put a fishing line in to be able to hang the ornament. I do apologize I didn't get that done in time for the video, but that's how I finished it off. Pretty pleased with the way it turned out. I think it's a good balance of delicate finial on combination with the sea urchin itself. Leave a comment, let me know what you think. And again, if anyone would like to order one for Christmas, please let me know.